Okay, hello everybody. My name is Jameson Young, sitting here with Jameson Young. Today, this is our YouTube channel, Self-Conflicted. Please subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about, a couple days ago was the 16th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, and we're going to be talking about that because for some of us people, us not so smart people, we don't have memories of college. We have younger memories of a really retarded time period in our life called Iraq. And for some of us older Iraq guys, these really retarded moments started the same moment the Iraq War began, because me and Jameson, our first deployment in the military was the invasion of Iraq. So they made me wear a rubber mop suit and for weeks on end in like the hottest desert on earth, or one of the hottest deserts on earth. And they jammed me in an Amtrak that was meant for like 12 guys, but they jammed us in there like 25 guys. Yeah, some of us can't get over that. And it's good though, because like as we were told, because of all the massive amounts of weapons of mass destruction Saddam Hussein had, we were told we stood a 99.9% chance of getting into a gas attack. So so thank God for those it probably was about one of the biggest intel screw ups of all time. But all the bitches and complaints aside, what are some of your most everlasting memories of the invasion? I'd probably have to say, one would be the living conditions. We went weeks on end without showering or changing clothes, weeks in those rubber mop suits. We'd go back and forth between digging in. After like 2 seconds we'd get our fighting holes dug, like chest deep. Then like a few minutes later, they'd tell us to load up the Amtraks and we'd go somewhere else. It just drug on and on for like weeks. So the living conditions sucked. Also, they told us we're going to be within Baghdad in 3 days, so don't bring any extra food or water. And 2.5 weeks later, we still weren't in Baghdad, so we ran out of water a couple different occasions. Other than the living conditions, I'd probably say like kind of what those World War II guys always said: snafu and foobar. Snafu situation normal, all fouled up. I might be getting this wrong. Foobar, fouled up beyond all recognition. Anyway, everything was just so screwed up. Like if you watch the movie Jarhead, it like mirrors the invasion of Iraq in 2003. We spent all these weeks preparing. Nothing played out the way it was supposed to. It was just amazing how when it comes to certain things, when it comes to the military actually doing their job, it's amazing how screwed up and how little they know, and it's like they're just like a pack of chickens running around with their heads cut off. I guess for me, I would say, like, I had a senior Marine say that it was like the U.S. military spent $300 billion on history's most elaborate CAX. A CAX is like a huge 20-30 day training op where you go out and play war games. I guess because since they did everything textbook, like all the artillery and all the airstrikes and stuff, it was a very surreal thing. Like I kept seeing these things. We kept doing these things, or I kept seeing things that I had seen in movies my whole life. But so it was kind of like I was used to it, but at the same time, it was the first time it was actually happening. First and only time in my life it was actually happening. I remember the horizon lighting up with all the artillery hitting it. I had seen that in my whole life, in the movies, but it was actually happening. I remember when we got to and around Baghdad, we were constantly going from government building, raiding, taking all the paperwork and getting everything we could get our hands on. I had seen that in movies, at the end of World War II in Germany. I'd seen that my whole life, but it was actually happening. So it was kind of surreal, I guess. Do you have any? First, do you have any funny stories to share about the invasion of Iraq? Funny stories. I guess one thing, I was in combat and I didn't even know it. The thing is, when we'd go into a city, EOD, explosives ordnance disposal, would follow us everywhere. They'd be blowing up all the police armories, military armories, Iraqi military vehicles. So there was always these explosions going on. One time we were in this city called Al-Qut. We were outside the Amtraks, and like a football field or two away, there was some explosions. And they started screaming at us to get into the Amtraks. Well, because we didn't really take the explosions serious, because there was always explosions going on from like EOD guys blowing stuff up. So we jumped in the Amtraks, and later on I found out that was a mortar attack. So that was pretty much like one of the very, very few combat experiences, since everybody, the entire Iraqi army kind of walked away and left. That brings me to the second funny story. On the second day of the war, there was all this shooting going on up front. So we loaded the Amtraks and went over there. By the time we got there was nothing but emptied like Iraqi Amtraks. They looked like little mini tanks. And besides the point, our assault guys wired them up and blew them up. But there was all these uniforms all over the ground, and out in the ways out in the desert, there was all these little farmer fields, like the size of a garden. They were maybe the size of a regular classroom. I mean, these fields were 30 feet by 30 feet. Like one farmer could have done the job, but there was 10 guys out there poking at the ground with sticks. It was the Iraqi army who took off their uniforms and then went and pretended to be farmers. So we were sitting there looking at them thinking, you dumbasses, we know who you are, but there was nothing we could do. So we just eventually, I remember we just kind of loaded the Amtraks and went on our way after we blew their Amtraks up. And yeah, we just kind of went on our way. I guess for me it would be what was supposed to be a big battle with the Baghdad 5th Brigade. We were all told that we were going to get into a big battle with the Baghdad 5th Brigade, but the artillery guys shelled the base all night long before we got there, and on top of it, like Jameson said, for the most part, they just kind of walked off and, took their uniform. The Iraqi army just kind of took their uniforms off and threw their uniforms on the ground. So by the time the next morning we got to this military compound, we raided it all SWAT style and took it all serious, but nobody was there. It was just a bunch of uniforms on the ground. And I remember our platoon sergeant. He was a guy named Staff Sergeant Disbro. I always remember him looking around, and he was like, "Hey guys, we won the battle." And then we all started cheering. We were like, yeah, we were like, yeah, we kicked their asses. That was probably the highlight of the invasion for me. So anyway, do you have other than the living conditions aside, is there anything that you'd say what pissed you off the most? Oh, what pissed me off when we got to the most, other than those living conditions that, yes, all these years later I'm still pissed about, but what pissed me off the most, I guess, when we got to Baghdad, we were our last objective was raiding some presidential palaces in Baghdad, and we pulled out all these guns that were laid out on the ground, and my job was to guard those guns. And for several months afterwards, I pocketed one of those guns. And they kept telling us, oh, if you bring any kind of gun or weapon, unauthorized gun or weapon home, you will go to prison. And so eventually I ended up dumping the gun that I got out of Saddam Hussein's presidential palaces, only to find out it was nothing but scare tactics. We didn't go through any kind of metal detectors. There was no way I would have gotten caught. I could have just walked onto the plane and with my gun, but because of scare tactics, I ended up dumping it. So I don't have a Saddam gun. I think all I got is an 8-ball from the Prime Minister of Iraq's house. Plus, I got a pair of the Prime Minister of Iraq's daughter's panties or something like that. For me, I think the thing that pissed me off the most about the invasion, we were supposed to get home from that invasion in mid-May. And that turned into early June. And that turned into late June. And by the end of the day, we got extended so many times. We didn't end up getting home until October. And we just sat in this town called Najaf, Iraq, forever. So that pissed me off. Plus, we had a translator named Gus, an Iraqi translator. He was just a regular Iraqi civilian. I gave him my camera of all the pictures I took during the invasion, and he was going to take it out in town and get the pictures done. Of course, by the time Gus left, he took my camera, and eventually our unit pulled out somewhere. I think we went for like a while to a town called Babylon or something, but eventually I never did get my pictures back. So
Yeah.
that took me
Thanks
off
a lot,
too.
Gus.
Okay, do you have any everlasting memories of the invasion, or at least scariest moments? Everlasting stories I already talked about. I guess if I have a scariest story, since the invasion was pretty combat light, the closest I ever came to dying was when I fell off the Amtrak. We were driving through the desert. It was in the middle of the night. Plus, I think we had just got done from there was this huge 2-day sandstorm followed by a bunch of rain, and it was pitch black, and we were driving through the desert. And at the time, we were allowed to just sit on top of the Amtraks, keeping security. And the Iraqi army had dug all these huge trenches in the desert because that way they could park their tanks in there, and you wouldn't see it if you were a quarter mile away. You wouldn't see the little dent in the desert, and it was like camouflage for their tanks. And this was an empty trench, and our Amtrak fell into the thing, and then I was sitting on top, so I got shot off, and I went up against the side of the side of the trench, and the Amtrak spun around. And when I looked back, the Amtrak was coming back, and its wheels stopped right here. So it came within inches. If it would have kept spinning around for another foot, I would have got crunched in between the Amtrak and the side of the trench that the Iraqi army had dug. That was the scariest, I guess, for me anyway.
Do you have a best moment? What made you feel the best good about it?
I'd say the best moment, we were all smokers. Some of us still are. But we, of course, all ran out of cigarettes. When we got to the outskirts of Baghdad, I think it was some platoon, maybe second or first platoon, raided a suspected nuclear facility. Turned out to be some type of cigarette factory. Our company gunnery Sergeant Seitz, I think that was his name. Maybe I'm getting that from a movie. It's been a long time. He loaded up 2 7-tons filled with cartons and crates of cigarettes. So there we all were sitting there with nicotine fits, and all of a sudden Gunny Seitz comes walking by, and he says, "You a smoker?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" And he throws 3 cartons of cigarettes on my lap. They were called Summers, I believe. If you hold them upside down, the wood chips would fall out. On one hand, they were the worst cigarettes, but at the same time, at that moment, it was the best cigarette and one of the best moments I ever had in my life. So that was the best moment I guess I have.
I guess for me it was pulling into Baghdad. I'm not going to fool myself. It was not liberating Paris, but to a super mini degree, it was liberating Paris to a mini degree. I remember, sitting in the Amtraks looking up at this building filled with balconies, and there was all these people there cheering. And, every time we went on patrol or tried to do a mission, it'd turn into a big parade. So for a very short period of time, it's made me feel good. Maybe we did do something right. But do you think anything good came from it?
I don't think so. I mean, you either have Saddam in power, or you have all these years of war and all that stuff. Either one is basically just as bad. I don't think, I hate to say it, but yeah, I don't know if anything really came from it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either.
Plus,
I'm not sure.
It also ruined my plans of going on a Westpac when I was in the military. I had big plans on things that I was going to do when I got to the Philippines and Thailand and Australia, and I had really good plans on what I was going to do when I got to the Philippines and Thailand. But so you had to ruin those plans.
Okay, anyway, this is a family show, or at least we try and keep it a family show. Anyway, that was just some of our memories from the invasion of Iraq. This is our YouTube channel, Self-Conflicted. Please subscribe. Thank you for tuning in.